Welcome back. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz meeting with Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia this morning. President Zelensky is not present for these talks. Rubio is saying this: the Ukrainians suffered greatly and their people have suffered greatly. And it's hard in the aftermath of something like that to even talk about concessions. But that's the only way this is going to end. The talks coming just hours after Ukraine launched its biggest drone attack on Russia yet, this time targeting Moscow using more than 300 drones. President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, reportedly set to meet with Vladimir Putin in Moscow this week. I spoke with President Trump about the Russia-Ukraine conflict in my exclusive interview. Are you comfortable with that? The fact that you walked away and Ukraine may not survive?
Well, it may not survive anyway, but, you know, we have some weaknesses with Russia. You know, it takes two. Look. It was not going to happen, that war, and it happened. So now we're stuck with this mess.
Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, great being here, Mariah.
Well, let's talk about all of the things happening today. You've got these talks underway in Ukraine. What are your thoughts in terms of what comes out of this? They're talking, obviously, in Saudi Arabia.
Well, certainly, I think we have some, real potential here. Well, I'm less worried about the Ukrainians making concessions. I certainly am worried about the Russians, who clearly, as opposed to giving up territory, they actually want more territory. They want Ukraine to demilitarize down to 85,000 troops, no peacekeepers in Ukraine at the end, no security deals with any other country, obviously no NATO participation. Ukrainians have already said they're willing to concede territory to Russians, particular territory that the Russians are occupying. They don't want to give it all to them, but certainly they're willing to make that concession. And from what I understand, Chief of Staff Yermak, who I know pretty well, is leading this delegation with the foreign minister and the defense minister from Ukraine. And I believe they're going to tell the American delegation that they're willing to go to an air and sea ceasefire. In other words, they will not use offensive air power and their drones also in the Black Sea. And that certainly is a step towards their willingness to go into negotiations and be serious about it if they go ahead and make that proposal that they said they were going to make. And I certainly believe the Americans are going to appreciate that. My concern from the outset has always been Putin comes in with a very, very hard line. I'm not convinced, even though he said he wants to negotiate to the president. We've had 2 meetings with the Russian team. I'll take Secretary Rubio at his word. He said he's not certain yet that the Russians are serious about going into these negotiations and willingness to compromise. Obviously, we're going to find out, Maria, and we're going to find out how far the Ukrainians are willing to go this week.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm always leery in terms of, believing what's coming out of that side. Well, the Trump administration has gone forth with its maximum pressure campaign on Iran, meanwhile, General, ending a waiver which had allowed Iraq to buy Iranian electricity. Iran's supreme leader, of course, responded to my interview with President Trump. The president told me about the letter that he sent to the Ayatollah in an effort to start nuclear talks, but then the Ayatollah responded, saying he will not negotiate with bullies. Here's the president with me this week when he broke the news.
Something's going to happen one way or the other. I hope that Iran, and I've written him a letter saying, I hope you're going to negotiate, because if we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them.
You wrote a letter to the Khomeini,
yes.
The leader? When did you send the letter?
Yesterday.
And you said you better negotiate, or we want you to negotiate?
I didn't say you better. I said, I
Okay.
hope you're going to negotiate, because it's going to be a lot better for Iran. And I think they want to get that letter. The other alternative is we have to do something, because you can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
General, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, those are the 2 options. I mean, the president has taken coercive diplomacy effort to try to see if the Iranian regime is willing to dismantle voluntarily their nuclear program, and obviously that would have to be by a date certain with some degree of verification by independent inspectors to ensure it's going on. We all know where the Iranians have come from on negotiations over the nuclear issues in the past, and it's simply delay, 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 and cheat, cheat, cheat. The president is very much aware of that. So we'll see what comes of it. Khamenei has already pushed back, and said he's not willing to negotiate, to go into anything that talks about dismantling his nuclear program. He's willing to talk about the militarization of it, which he's going to lie, and say it doesn't exist. And when we all know full well that Iran is in pursuit of a nuclear weapon here. If we continue down this path, I think the president, what we'll see is the Israeli-led, U.S.-supported limited strike to deal with the nuclear enterprise in Iran in the upcoming number of weeks, maybe early summer, late summer, for this to take place. So
you think that's what President Trump was referring to when he said something's got to happen, something's got to give at this point, that specifically it will be Israel destroying the nuclear stockpiles, or whatever you want to call it, the nuclear efforts in Iran?
Yeah, I think the United States will support that effort as well, and may indeed participate to a limited degree because we have capabilities that the Israelis do not have. I don't know if that's a fact, but I do know about the difference in our capabilities, and certainly our military is talking to the Israelis military. They've been doing this for many, many weeks. The president is very much aware of where Prime Minister Netanyahu is on this, and certainly he's already indicating that he's willing to so-called pull that trigger if the Iranians do not want to go into some kind of negotiations to dismantle their nuclear enterprise. Look, everybody knows you can't trust the Iranians. The president wants to see if we can do this peacefully. He's not going to give them forever to make that decision, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, ceasefire talks are also moving forward in Qatar, where Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff will be for negotiations today. Witkoff told Fox News that Hamas must leave Gaza for any deal to work. General, we've talked about this in the past. Hamas doesn't want to leave Gaza. Do you think we're going to be able to get past this and eliminate any Hamas leadership in Gaza?
You know, it's hard to get optimistic about anything dealing with Hamas because they're killers, obviously, and they want to maintain control in Gaza. But they have told our hostage rescue leader, Andy Bola, that they are willing to discuss their disarming themselves and giving up control of Gaza and entering into some kind of truce deal for a 5 or 10 year period. I mean, if that actually has some veracity behind it, I would be stunned if that's the case. So let's find out this week in negotiations if there's anything real to something like that going forward. That certainly would be good news. But listen, Maria, we get very little good news from Hamas.
Of course. General, you and I have spoken about defense spending and the need to modernize our military for a long time. I asked President Trump about it. Watch this. Are you cutting defense spending, or are you building us up?
I never said defense spending.
Okay, because I think you were talking about denuclearization,
Correct.
And that's where the cutting of the spending came in.
I never said cut. No, it's not in these days. I'd love to cut defense spending, but not now. Because you have China, you have Russia, you have a lot of problems out there. What I have said is we spend a lot of money on nuclear missiles, nuclear weapons. The level of destruction is beyond anything you can even imagine. It's just bad that everybody has to spend all this money on something that if it's used, it's probably the end of the world.
So, General, President Trump gets it. He knows he needs to increase defense spending in the face of all of these tyrants, from Russia to China to Iran and North Korea. Are you comfortable with the numbers that you're hearing about, General, in terms of what they're talking about, in terms of a spike in defense spending in this upcoming reconciliation package, sir?
Yeah, I think there's two things going on here. One is there's an 8% cut that's taking place in the Pentagon right now. And the object of that cut is to take out the fat in the Pentagon budget, not the muscle in it. And they're leaving that up to the service secretaries and the chiefs of the military chiefs of those services to come back to the Pentagon leadership with that. I actually think that is pretty good because I've said right from the beginning, we have got to eliminate some of the waste in the Pentagon, and we got to fix the business practices before we give it considerably more money.
Okay.
The plus-ups we're talking about, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee both have united, and they want to get the defense spending closer to 5% over a 2-year period. I definitely agree with that.
Very good.
During Afghanistan and Iraq was about 4.7. When the Reagan buildup occurred, it was straight-lined about 6%. We
Yes.
can't get there with flatline budgets to accomplish what the president wants. So a plus-up has to take place. But good news, let's get the waste out of there first.
Okay.
Let's also fix the business practices.
Very good. I'm very pleased that you are supportive of this and that you think it's right. Now I am good with it. General, good to see you, sir. Thank you, sir.